University of Johannesburg has officially severed ties with Israel's Ben-Gurion University. The UJ Senate decision to allow the formal relationship between the two institutions to lapse will take effect as of the 1st of April. And for more on this, we're on the line to David Bilshitz, Associate Professor of Law at the UJ and Director at the South African Institute for Constitutional Public Human Rights and International Law, as well as Professor Bilshitz and Friedman, Director of the Center for the Study of Democracy at the University of Johannesburg, supporting the cutting of ties between the UJ and BGU, but of course against it, as we mentioned, is David Bilshitz, the Associate Professor. We're going to say good evening to you both, gentlemen. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Let me start with you, Mr. Bilshitz. Why were you against the severing of ties, and how do you feel now that the decision has been taken by a majority or 60% of the Senate to cut the ties?
Good afternoon to Pisa and to your listeners. Thank you very much. I believe the decision is a deeply disappointing one and regrettable. I think it will lead to the cutting off of valuable research at the University of Johannesburg relating to water, which is very important for our country and, in fact, for all people all around the world, and with very little benefit. In fact, I think it will be counterproductive to fundamental rights, to advancing fundamental rights in the region, and it really sends a message which is about cutting off connection instead of promoting and engaging in dialogue and trying to really advance peace in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. Professor Friedman, I understand that there was actually a report following a fact-finding mission to the BGU in February. What did that report find?
Well, Pisa, let me say, I'm not speaking on behalf of the university. I'm speaking on behalf of those who signed the petition calling for the severing of ties. So I think the university should really speak about its own fact-finding mission. Our view, of course, is that this is a tremendously welcome step forward. The decision is being, of course, misrepresented, presumably in order to get maximum support for the other side. We're not interfering in the right of any individual academic at either university to make arrangements and cooperate if they wish. What we're doing is defending the freedom, our academic freedom of people in Palestine and in South Africa by insisting that the entire university community should not be held to an agreement simply because some academics wish to cooperate with each other. So, this is not cutting off water research if people want to conduct it, but it is making clear that we at UJ would prefer not to have a formal institutional relationship with a university which daily violates human rights and academic freedom.
Right, but while I don't ask you to speak on behalf of the university, Professor Friedman, I do ask this question based on the charges, very serious charges, that the BGU collaborated with the Israeli military and on other issues, occupation and apartheid practices. What I'm asking is that was there evidentiary proof that this was actually happening, or was it just guilty by association?
No, it wasn't guilty by association. No, Tisa, just to clarify, that information about Ben-Gurion's collaboration with the Israeli occupation was produced by our group, not by the university. It's extensively documented. Ben-Gurion University actively works with the Israeli military in order to cement the occupation. It has one set of rules for soldiers who do degrees, another set of rules for everybody else. It is guilty of various acts of suppression of academic freedom on its campus. All of this is documented in a report which the signatory group issued a couple of days ago.
Professor Bilshitz, if that is the case, and isn't it really a little bit more than denying academics to work together if there is thinking and even proof that this is a university that is not only embedded in a militarized state but is obligated to carry out state policies?
I think it's a piece of the argument. I mean, I think one has to break down a variety of arguments. I think, firstly, that report itself is the veracity of some of the claims really needs to be questioned. But I think, really, I mean, the question...
Most of the claims whose veracity he's challenging come from the university, Ben-Gurion University's website.
Well, as I say, I mean, and some of the stuff that's said would be regarded as, something like MIT, for example, regularly engages in research that has military implications, but then the question becomes, of course, whether UJ should cut off its ties with other universities, and many universities, in fact, engage in research with military implications.
Not with militaries who are illegally occupying other people's land.
I beg to differ, Stephen. I think there are many militaries that are in
Well, bring us the examples and we'll look at them.
Well, of course, and militaries that, of course, are involved in oppressing their own populations as well, and of course, Chinese populations. Or what about America, which is also in occupation of and has been of other people's land? And Harvard is currently instituting a system of cooperation with the military.
Professor
then do we cut up our relationships with Harvard?
No UN resolutions declaring American actions illegal. The Israelis are in violation of a whole series of UN resolutions.
Well, as I say, I think the principle is really whether or not it's sufficient to be complicit in with a military to be actually offering, for example, special programs to that military. And in fact, the Ben-Gurion University
programs. It's changing the academic rules so that there's one set of rules for soldiers and one set of rules for anybody else. No American university does that. No university in a democracy does that.
Many countries in the world have done that because often military personnel have to give up and sacrifice a lot of themselves for their countries, and so as a result, there sometimes are. I know, for example, my own grandfather in South Africa was given a special dispensation after the Second World War.
He was allowed to do a BA in 2 years because he was a soldier.
He was given special dispensation.
No, that's not the same, David. It's not the same. A GI Bill which gives people money to go to university is not the same as allowing soldiers to do an ordinary BA degree in a year.
Professor Friedman, let me ask you this.
And it's not the same as giving an allowance to soldiers so that they can go off and violate other people's rights in
They're not giving an allowance to soldiers to do that. In fact, Ben-Gurion University, as far as I'm aware, is criticized highly within Israel for being a very left-wing university.
Well, that gives you an indication of what passes for left-wing.
Gentlemen, I'm going to interrupt you. Professor Friedman, I'd like to ask you this, and perhaps Professor Bilshitz, you can say whether or not this is true. Professor Friedman, are you against the awarding of academic scholarships to students who are Army reservists and those that help Israeli Air Force pilots obtain university degrees? And Professor Bilshitz, are you saying that does not occur at all?
One set of academic rules for one group of people and another for another. The question is giving people who are going off to fight a special allowance with university money to encourage them to go off and fight.
It's not about encouraging. This is what Stephen's saying. He's saying it's encouraging people to fight.
People who are entirely defenseless. Ben-Gurion University did that repeatedly.
People in Israel are required to go to the military service, and many of them are required to give a lot of time.
Professor Friedman, allow him to answer.
And as a result, there may be special programs, and I think all societies do provide such programs. It therefore seems to me
we're not talking about special programs. We are talking about giving people extra money, giving students allowances so that they can go off and fight in illegally occupied territory.
It's about, ultimately, it is special programs. It's about ultimately making special dispensation for people who may have to, as we say, because of, and we can go into the debate about the actual circumstances, but have to do that because of particular circumstances. And it's not about saying we encourage anyone to commit human rights violations.
Okay.
One can be in an army, and I personally am not a fan of armies, but the fact is countries do need them, and as a result...
what is the country you're defending needed for? To occupy other people's territory, to set
I think that's nonsense, Stephen. I mean, I think in the Middle East...
women, and to put walls through other people's olive orchards.
Any fair-minded person...
Is that the kind of thing you feel a university ought to encourage?
Any fair-minded person would say that they would recognize that the Middle East is a situation and is an environment in which there's a need for military.
I need to ask you this. Is it true, Professor Friedman, Professor Friedman, if you could just hold on a second. I'm asking this to Professor Bilshitz. Is it true or is it not true that the BGU does benefit from the Israeli Defense Forces sponsored programs in which there is research on advanced technologies into to PARC and the Israelis states atomic research programs and facilities, and that some of these include unmanned and robot technologies?
So as I say, my feeling is that universities often conduct research, and particularly in militarized societies, that have military implications. None of the information that I see from the report tells me that the BGU's gone out specially to try and go and design things to hurt other people.
What do you think most important point, David?
The most important thing that the most important point is
obnoxious weaponry, are they?
The most important point is about what was the UJ research going to do. It was about the particular linkage between the water research in UJ and BGU and the situation
Professor
in Israel
Friedman,
and South Africa.
Professor Friedman, does this not impact
resolution? It was quite clear from the outset that if Professor Mamba, who is the person at UJ who is doing this, wishes to continue to conduct his water research, he is entitled as an individual.
Then what is the point of an academic boycott,
We do not want to be bound by an agreement with a university which is a serial human rights abuser.
I'm afraid we have run out of time.
It's just a symbolic point if there's no real effect. The point
is not, because it means that the two
Gentlemen, we're going to have to continue this discussion at another time. It is unfortunate, a very important debate, and we unfortunately do not have enough time to continue with it, but I'm sure we will on other platforms. That's Professor Stephen Friedman, Director of the Center for the Study of Democracy at the University of Johannesburg. He was supporting the cutting of ties or severing of ties between the UJ and BGU. And of course, opposed to that is David Bilshitz. He's an Associate Professor of Law at the UJ and Director